being the inaugural talk /
I didn't
conversation.
realize that was the inaugural event, but
Yes,
happy to do
number
it.
one.
Amazing.
Absolutely. So whereabouts are you coming in from, Danielle?
I'm in LA.
How is it?
Oh, it's nice and sunny. I moved from Brooklyn, where I was for nearly 15 years, so I'm still in the sort of utopia. It's just sunny out. Enjoying my.
Gotcha. Nice. So we have people joining. Hello, everybody. Hope you are doing very well. Hope you're doing fantastically. The person to my left or right, depending on which side of the screen you're looking, is Danielle Maveal. She is joining me for the first session of our community creator program. So thank you for joining me, Danielle. Welcome everybody for the first session. Hope everyone is doing well. Let us know in the chat where you are currently based, country-wise, city-wise. Love to know. Say hi. And remember, any questions that you have throughout this particular discussion, any future discussions, you can pop them in the Q&A tab or in the chat tab, and we'll make sure we pick that one up. Good to see Ben is on the first call as well. Hey, Ben from the UK, obviously. Frank from Rotterdam, Netherlands. Mayank from India. Tess from Toronto. Hey, Tessa, good to see you. Obviously, we have Danielle from LA, representing the States. Minnesota, Mexico, New Hampshire. So we've got a good spread. San Diego. Hey, Nelson. Good to see you. Yeah, what Ben said, remember, folks, to select all panelists and attendees in the chat when sending a message. Okay, so I think we should do oh, Ryan's from LA as well. There we go. Nice. So I think we should just do a little bit of a quick intro. So this is the kickoff session / inaugural conversation for the Community Creators Toolkit. And I'm through this 6-week program is to provide you all with everything you need to start, grow, and develop your community for whatever business, product, service, or interest you are currently working on. So we are bringing in lots of people who actually know what they're talking about with this stuff, including Danielle here. And hopefully we're going to be learning a ton of stuff and bringing you guys a ton of valuable info that you can go and then bring into your businesses, projects, or whatever you're going to use this for. So thank you everybody for joining. Hope you enjoy this first conversation. And yeah, that is the end of this spiel. Hopefully you had all the links through on email to where you can ask questions within the Circle channel, access the program, talks and links. And if you don't have those, then pop it in the chat and either Amy or Ben will point you in the right direction, just so you make sure we've got everything to kick things off. So that is my piece. Now we can get on to the more interesting stuff. So Danielle, thanks again for joining me. Rather than me kind of botch an introduction to you because your credentials speak for themselves, do you want to go ahead and give everybody the proper rundown and introduction of you and how you kind of ended up here with us today?
Sure thing. Let's see. I was a goldsmith. I had just moved to Detroit. I was making jewelry and I found a website that was pretty small called Etsy. And I ended up voluntarily running multiple Etsy teams and putting on community events. And they gave me the freedom to do whatever I wanted. And I voluntarily brought a ton of community members together. And so they hired me. I was one of the first 12 employees to build community and education there. And I was there for 5 years. I like to say I made all my community mistakes there. And I write about them in my newsletter if you're curious to what those are. And since then, I worked on the founding team of BarkBox, and I've worked at Airbnb and Lyft building community programs. And I actually am building my own community platform right now, and I'm using no-code tools. So I found out about no-code through the On Deck community, which is an amazing community, and just have been in this little ecosystem. So I'm excited to be here, meet you all, and learn more about what you're building.
Nice. That is awesome. So you definitely have a tiny bit of experience in some fairly well-known companies who I'm guessing had some fairly well-developed communities as well. So bringing a tad of experience to this conversation, which is awesome. I wanted to kind of make sure we kick things off on the right foot. So this is all about community and community building. And where does community start from? Let's say, like, what in its most basic function is a community?
Ooh, I love this. So I always say community is built one conversation at a time. So community is the bond between two people, which starts between with a conversation. So always look to this. We kind of have to erase the marketing funnel idea where we're inspiring people with our mission or our features or our brand, and we're trying to attract as many people as possible to a single source, the brand or organization. You have to kind of erase what we know about audience building through that marketing funnel and flip it around where you're actually starting with one conversation at a time and you're adding to that like Katamari style. You need something to stick to. So that one conversation is where you start and you just need to continually add conversations and bonds to that initial spark.
So how does that work? That seems like an easy thing to do when you're just starting out. So let's say you were starting a new project, which many of the people in this conversation likely are, and your community starts nice and compact, and you can have individual one-on-one relationships with people. How, as that grows, how do you keep those threads together? So maybe you've got like a few hundred members, it starts getting busy. How do you manage that?
I like to lean on rituals and rhythms. So rituals, I'll give you an example of a ritual. So at Lyft, if you remember when Lyft first started and you got into a Lyft car, you give a fist bump to the driver. This was just like a meaningless action. Actually, touch is a community bonding sort of hack. So if you, I have got a ton of those, but anyway, that's like this fist bump is one way that we're creating a ritual and we're feeling connected and we're in this experience together. So thinking of rituals, welcoming rituals are really important, and you see those a lot in community building. And then the other thing is rhythms. So why are we coming back to this space? So we want to create rhythms in our community programs. You might see this we do something happy hour Friday nights, or on Wednesdays we share photos of our pets or whatever. If we create these rituals and rhythms, it's a great way to get people to come back and bring others with them too.
I like that. I've actually, that's a brand new concept. I'm taking notes as you talk. That leads me on to kind of like another question, which is like an early stage one, is like, why actually is community important? So this is something which is now front and center of the conversation, more so this year than previous years, for whatever reason. We can get into that a bit later. But yeah, why is community important for any stage, be it a startup, medium-sized business, or a company the size of Uber or Etsy or Lyft?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know any other way. And to me, I worked in the most magical environments and felt like, especially early on, that the team and the community that we served and we're building for were one community. And that just, you know, I think one of the biggest things that we don't talk about in importance of community is how close we can get to our users, because we are holding space for dialogue and play and co-creation. And then we get a deeper understanding of who we're building and creating for, and not even deeper understanding, but we actually are part of the community. So we're all one building something together. I just think a community can give your mission superpowers. I mean, at Etsy, we really wanted to change the world's economy, and I don't think we would have been on such a trajectory if we didn't have the community bonds that made us felt like an army, like that we had a common enemy, which was mass production, and we all together, it took all of us to make this change. So if you think you can do it alone, you're building for people, and community will give you superpowers to do that.
And yeah, I love that. Is this kind of the same sort of thing that was pushed historically about just talking to customers? Has it been like that side which is evolved into building community, or is it something different?
I think that's a natural place to start. Actually, I talked to a ton of people who are kicking off companies and they want to have some aspect of community to it. They're not quite sure why or what it's going to do for them yet. But I love the obsession now that we have, but we didn't always have, of being close to the user and really deeply understanding them. And once you have those conversations and build those bonds, the next step is building bonds between them. So I'm even testing out these user research sessions where we actually don't just do one-on-one calls, but we get people in a group, and then we start to see what conversations are having between members who have shared values and are interested in our mission. I might have gone off
That's
track.
interesting.
What is
No,
your
no, that's
question?
no, that's a really interesting thread to pull on actually, because like most of the time we just have like conversations like one on one. It could be us answering something like a support question if they've got like an issue with a particular part of your product, and it's usually like solving a grievance. So to be able to flip the conversation to have like positive conversations, especially in a group, that seems to me like that would be a good thing to do. How would you actually go about facilitating something like that?
Well, I tell people to start by just having a Zoom call. I'm not a giant fan of using Zoom for community. I think, there's only so far you can go, but if you're just starting, I say bring 5 to 6 people that are your ideal community members. And I like to identify those people that they share the values. They're probably really interested in what you're building. You're solving a problem for them, but they're also helpers. So they're natural sort of joiners, hand raiser helpers, and bring those people into a call. And my question I always tell people to ask is, hey, we're all here. We have similar challenges. What could we do together that we couldn't do independently? And see where the conversation goes from there. So that's like your community MVP to me. I think the next step of that is you might, from that conversation, come up with a program where you're bringing people together repeatedly and talking about that question and maybe solving it together. I think you can start these conversations, and the programming, I think often we go backwards where we're like, let me start a Slack channel. But in fact, if we start with the conversation and the bonds, they will immediately be magical and start to identify these insights of how people want to gather, what projects they want to work on. I'm big into projects and programs and activations. I'm not super big into like, let's just all continually throw links at each other in a Slack channel for all of time. So
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
really focus people back into like, how are we gathering? What's the program that's going to support us, like support us through transformation and to build deeper bonds?
Got it. Yeah, this is kind of one of the good things we do see at MakerPad when we host things like our challenges, which are over like a set period of time, kind of bringing people together to have like a shared goal, a shared outcome. People are working on similar things, and naturally, these kind of groups start to form of like accountability groups or people sharing their projects, people saying they're working on the same thing, and then they actually just like naturally gravitate to each other. And I bet it's actually harder online because of the distance between you. Actually have to get on Zoom calls. But yeah, I really like what you said about putting people into groups. That's great. Is there any tactics, like, let's talk rather than like theoretical, if you were going into start into like a new project today, what would be your like first 30 days of either finding out what community exists, how does that compare to an audience, and then where would you go from there?
Hmm. So I think there's 2 ways I would look at it. So one is I often am drawn to build a brand community, and we might have people in the audience that are really building a grassroots community of people who are getting together and figuring out what features we want to build for them. And then there might be people who are like, I have a brand and I want to build a community around my brand. So I can go both ways. I'll start with the brand. So
Mhm.
the brand, what I first dive into is, what is your mission? And often people will tell me the problem that they want to solve. And then I have to come back and like, it takes a couple weeks, but we need to have a mission to rally people around.
Yep.
That's a utopia. Like where are we going to be in 10 to 20 years if we can activate every single community helper out there that's related to this problem? Because if you don't have a really strong mission that you're going to inspire people to come join in under, there's so many, and we're doing this right now, everyone's building communities. There's so many tools out there to build communities, they'll just go build their own. So you really need to think about what's the mission, and then what's your unique value prop? Like what resources can you give this community so that they'll have superpowers to reach this mission? I think if you don't build from there and you just start throwing spaghetti at the wall, you'll have a harder time. And then, I'm like obsessed with business outcomes, which, for community builders, I think it's really important to understand what are the business goals right now and how can this community work ladder up to the business goals? Because if you can't build a sustaining community that impacts business goals, you'll have leaders that are going to tell you that they love it and are going to throw resources at it. But let me tell you, 6 to 9 months down the line, your feet to the fire, and people are going to wonder why we're investing in this.
Yeah, when you
Those
start
are the
looking at
things
the cost center.
Yes, exactly. Those are the things I get lined up first before I even start building. And I think then the tactical stuff actually comes a lot easier, because it's like if somebody sat down with a blank canvas and someone said paint a painting, you're just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Have a little bit of structure here to then go, okay, well, and accountability groups make sense, and advisory council doesn't make sense right now because it's not aligned with the goal. If I'm going to just straight up build community, one thing I like to do is look through all the community platforms that exist right now, Reddit, Meetup, Discord, just go looking for what's going on already. What is failing people? What do they ask for? And hear crickets when they're asking for it. You can look for like inner circles in these groups. I mean, Reddit is a great one. You can just go look, see where people are starting to want to organize, but don't have a space to organize. And as soon as you show up with a space to organize that work, they're really excited and jump on board. And then I'll look for the helpers in these communities. And often you might think they're the moderators or the people with the badges, but the helpers are actually the people who are answering questions, providing resources, and not getting reward for it. And they're like a little secret weapon that are hiding out there on the internet already. And if you can befriend them and activate them, they will do a ton of work for you for little reward. Only they're invested in helping others and invested in us reaching some mutual mission together.
Yeah, I really like that last point, because it feels, because obviously we've got a little community in MakerPad, which is great. And when you actually start to see those people emerge, that you see them like commonly answering questions in the thread, it kind of gives you a feeling that you may be on the right track with the community, because then as people start interacting, you're not having to like guide the conversation all the time. So it almost feels like that's like a little bit of a tipping point in community building.
Right. Yeah, and if you can seed them early on, this is why I say bring them together. Like you can find 5 to 6 of them and bring them together, and they're all helping each other. It's this like incredible little human flywheel of just helping resources and program creation. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Nice. Right, we have a couple of questions. Let's kind of take a couple from the audience. We have, what do you think is the distinction, if any, of audience versus community?
Oh, yes. Okay. So there are 3 types of communities, and some of them I even wonder if we can call them communities, but I'm a bit of a purist. But there is a type of community that is called a pool community, and that is we all are in the same space together. We all like Miley Cyrus, and we're attending a Miley Cyrus concert, and we might be bumping up against each other and making quick connections, but that's a pool community. And I would say that's a bit like an audience. And then a hub, which is where we have central figures that we're all connected to. And I would say this is like Instagram followers. I would say Clubhouse is like this. Like we show up because there are these central figures speaking, but you'll notice the audience doesn't really have a way to connect with each other. So this is a central figure community, and I'd say that these are audiences. Community is when there are a web of bonds. Current obsession of mine, we'll just hammer home, but there are a web of bonds between members, and there are like almost infinite amount of connections. The more members you add, the more bonds are created. And they are really creating the content and the programming that serves the entire community.
I like it. Good answer. Really good answer. Should every company be trying to build community? Every company seems to think they should.
No, no, no. I don't think so. I think if you don't have a powerful mission, I mean, who cares? Direct to consumer dental floss. I don't need to be part of your community. I do think I want to say that there are community activations that you can participate in. And I think often we get stuck in, I need to build a community. It needs to be like a Slack channel or forum or Facebook group, which means it's high commitment, it's 24/7, need to hire people to monitor conversations. And community is like, I think that's like just how we've started to think of what community is. But if you think back to the earliest communities, where it's like church or it's like, a full moon ceremonies, like we're actually coming together just at the moments that make sense. And that's totally fine. And that's what I
Right.
call like community activation. Maybe we'll have an event once a month or a meetup, that's fine. And that sometimes is
Gotcha.
enough.
Yeah, no, I can completely agree. I mean, building like an irrelevant community just to talk about like one product rather than a mission. Like mission seems to be one of these key messages that keeps coming across. And another mention of that is communities around brands. Do you think too many business owners look at communities as a way to sell their products and services rather than getting people together around a shared mission?
Yeah. Yeah, I even think I've been part of communities that have been purchased by brands, and then all of a sudden I can just see the community managers kind of focus shift, and I can see continual, like, even when they're asking for input, I know it's to provide insights to build the product. So yeah, I think and also here's the other thing, there are easier and cheaper ways to sell stuff than community, let me tell you. I've burned that bridge many times where I like come up with this entire program and then the marketing team's like, yeah, but we could just run this ad. So yes, think about if you can do it easier with traditional or growth marketing, don't do it with community.
Okay, right. This brings up like an interesting thread, which I feel we should pull on. Many of the people in this conversation are building community for early stage products, platforms. Insert your type of thing you're working on right now, which I'm sure there are many in which we'll learn about over the next few weeks. But in terms of tactics, I guess we go back to the goal of building a business, let's call it a business, which is successful and that I guess brings you in an income which you can sustain yourself. Maybe it's around like an interest. This is probably a reason why a lot of the people building communities are doing so. They want to attract people in, they maybe want to earn some revenue from them and serve them something. I'm guessing that is the goal 95% of the time. Where does community fit on the ladder of tactics to try when you're just starting out? And is there a priority list in your eyes?
Yeah, I think, you should find that product market fit. Oh man, there's two ways to do it. There's
It's
two,
okay to have two ways to do it.
yeah, I go two ways. So, if you know what product you want to build or exact problem you want to solve, I think you should work to figure that out and make sure you have a valuable offering that the community can rally around. There is like a building in community method where you're building a community and with them you're building products for them. So you really could go both ways. But if you're not building a community and then building products to support them, I would say make sure you have product market fit, make sure you have a marketing strategy. I often get people coming to me that don't have a marketing strategy. So that's, if you don't have a marketing strategy and you're starting to build community, you are going to try to push community into the marketing funnel. And that is when people are going to just smell you out and leave. So
you see them as two completely separate things. So one of the actual questions you have in the chat right now is, how is community different than marketing?
yes, yes. So marketing, we might have marketing professionals here. You could define it for me, but To me, your marketing, you're selling your brand, your mission, your vision, your product, your, how you can change someone's world with your set of features or your product. And community is, we we are a group of people who care about each other. We probably care about, like, we have a shared connection to this mission or product or set of features or problem as well. And we're happy to live under your brand umbrella because we believe in you and you are also providing resources to support us, and we feel like we're going somewhere together.
Gotcha. So what's your opinion on the current state of community building? Let's say, rightly or wrongly, everyone's trying to build a community right now, and hopefully more than often people get it right. They should be building communities more. It's great to bring people together, especially in times like this when people feel separated. Building a community can be an exceptionally valuable thing. Why do you think it's become so popular, especially this year, or it seems to be that popular?
Well, I think we have reached the sort of tipping point for this loneliness epidemic where we all feel like we need to be connected to something. And if you can unlock belonging, that is very powerful, and we've seen it work. And so I think we're all trying to figure out, and I think what we all are often building, we really do truly believe in it and have some grander mission. And so we need people to come along with us. And I mean, when it works, it's awesome. It's magical. And, we feel like we're one community doing really great work together. I think the problem is we often don't even know what community is, how it differs from marketing, what we should expect of our community. We throw strategies against the wall to see what sticks. We're not super focused. We're not providing value, but we're expecting a lot from our community. And when your community is built on loose bonds, this is what I'm afraid of. You build these communities, you might have a Slack channel with thousands and thousands of members, and you're looking at these vanity metrics and going, I have all these members, and maybe it's like, they are asking each other and answering each other's questions, but it could be very transactional. Actually, no bonds are formed. And when you actually go to tap into that community to work on the mission together, they're very hard to activate. So my fear is that we build too many of these bloated communities, and then we get the reply guys and tech Twitter going, wait a minute, we thought community was awesome, but actually it's a farce. It's not as great as we all thought it was, because we're not actually building thriving, abundant, healthy communities.
Got it. Makes sense. And on the subject of activating community, so let's say you're building a little bit of traction. You've got a few people who are let's call them early adopters, these secret superstars who will be involved in your community, no matter how it's going. They either support you personally, they're either dead in line with your interests, beliefs, and are building the same thing, and you're all kind of part of each other's community and you're supportive. And then you kind of get to this phase where you've got people in there and they're maybe not as active as you hope they'd be. You thought that is this really going well? How would you then form a strategy around activation, but without trying to lean over too far into the I'm just going to try and sell you stuff and seem markety or salesy?
Yeah. Well, I think you have to talk to them and make sure you understand what motivates them, why they're here, why they stick around, and you use those motivations to see, okay, well, here's our mission. You share that with them. I straight up share goals with my community. I'm like, hey, we're a community here, and to get resources, I need us to get to A, B, and C. Is everyone aligned with that? And once they're all like, yeah, that's cool, I want to get to A, B, and C too, then it's like, okay, well, who wants to start taking over some of this work? And we talk about leadership programs, which I've built with the community. What kind of programs you want to voluntarily help run for the community? Who's bought in? Okay, then I throw up an application form. We see who the best candidate is, and we let them take over a section of work. I think that's the next step, is actually giving up some of the reins and letting people jump in and do the work with you. You do have to understand what's going to motivate them to do that work. I think if you want to figure out who does this best, I just wrote about it in my newsletter. Duolingo, if you didn't know, over 90% of their language courses, thousands of language courses, are created by their community. They have figured out how to
No
activate
way.
their members. Right. They actually will create the content and QA the content and then update the content over time. It's incredible. They voluntarily do this. And Duolingo has unlocked getting them to do that. Laura Nestler is the woman who did this. She has this whole talk on it. I'll go check it out. And if you want to understand, like
Whoa.
motivating community members to chime in.
Do you think that's a tricky thing to do, especially if you built like the community with your own two hands from the ground up, like many of the people in here likely will be, to actually like hand over some responsibility?
Oh my God, it's the hardest thing to do. I am actually not the greatest at it. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and you have to just really, you have strong community values, you have a strong brand. Like if I look at Airbnb, I kind of understand, even as an Airbnb host, what Airbnb would approve of and what they wouldn't. I don't know. Their brand is like infused in every single word and every single graphic. So you need a really strong brand. You need strong values. You can create really strong playbooks and training, and then let people go. And they'll actually surprise you. We at Etsy, we built something called Street Teams, which we thought were going to be. We'll send you posters. The head of marketing used to be in a band. So we're like, let's create street teams. We'll send them Etsy posters and they'll put them up in their cities. And we gave them all forums as well. Okay, well, we gave them no restrictions and they went wild. And some of them created nonprofits that are still around today. Some of them are just made of thousands of members
Whoa.
that live craft shows are all around the world. They'll meet up with each other. They did more than we even expected them to do because we weren't too precious about that work. That would be even hard for me to do now. But when you're small, it's like actually kind of fun to give people that freedom and see what they do. And then you reward and support the people who are going in the direction that is aligned with the business. And those who aren't, you can kind of like shuffle them over and also like tell the story of those who are doing it in the right way over and over again to reinforce that behavior.
Would you do that like before it gets painful or as it gets painful? So I know these are one of the things like with hiring people, you do everything yourself until it becomes really painful and then you have to get
Yeah.
somebody else in. But does it
You
work the
gotta
same with community building?
Yeah. You have to do it yourself. So Laura Nestler, also at Duolingo, actually every program that they do, they run it themselves. Like a head of community will actually run
Mhm.
meetups and go and do the entire thing themselves and iterate slightly and then do it again. They iterate slightly and do it again until they hit a model where it's like, okay, this is easy for me. I can figure out how we can scale it and I can figure out how I can plug other people in to go from 10 meetups to 100 meetups. Once we hit 100, then with the community input, we can figure out how we can get to 1,000. But unfortunately, yeah, you got to get your hands dirty and do it yourself first, so you know what it takes to go into it.
Yeah. Okay, I'm with you. We have a couple of more questions. Change of pace from Alex. He says, how do you encourage or incentivize early involvement in the first communities you build to Etsy, Lyft, and Airbnb, particularly since there often isn't much benefit in V1 of a community since there aren't as many people? Seems like there could be a chicken and egg problem.
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, I think I actually find it harder to get value out of a large community myself. So I think actually in community building, it's a bit of a benefit that you have a small team and you can bring a small group of people together and that you feel like you're all in the same room and you're all like on the same page. As you start to grow, I think it actually gets harder. Um, how do you incentivize? I think that the mission and vision of where we could go together that we can't go alone is the key to really getting people to join in. And that should be the work you do in that first maybe like 3 months of bringing people together. Really understand, actually, let's create a giant list of what we could do together that we can't do alone. And then let's stack rank it together. And then let's test programming all down that line and see where we hit some kind of magical um, mash of people, programming, and purpose. And then that's how you inspire people to keep coming back, because you're solving a problem together with them.
And there's also another question on a similar sort of thread. How do you build rhythm in a community? So I guess this is about people like coming into community, like posting regularly, I guess being classed as like an active community member. How do you like build and encourage that to happen?
Well, Noelle Flowers has a blog as well. I don't know if anyone's out there wants to find this, but she runs the Teachable community. She has amazing posts on engagement and creating these rhythms and rituals. But one thing I think we often forget is that we can just tell people what the rituals are of the community, what the values are of the community, what the rhythms are of the community. This is what we do here. This is what we don't do here. On Fridays, we do this. And you'll be shocked at how many people go, why? Many people just won't ask. So you just test it out and tell people that's what they do here. And the earlier in the journey, like if they come in and you're telling them, hey, this is what we do here, here are the rhythms, they're like, oh, okay, I understand the way this community works and how I participate. I think often we don't give them that kind of guidance or direction. And so if they don't know how to participate, I've logged into Slack channels that I'm really excited about, and I never come back because I don't know how to participate beyond a welcome message, which everyone seems to have nailed. But beyond that, what do we do together here?
So almost some sort of like community member onboarding program. Sounds like it should be more of a thing than it potentially is.
Yeah.
Does that sound
Yeah.
fair?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I guess when people sign up for like a SaaS product or something, like onboarding flows and like main upfront and center, but rarely do we speak about doing it from like a community standpoint. We just like,
Yeah.
hey, welcome, like this is there, this is there, this is there. And then off you go.
Yeah. Oh, and I didn't answer actually the question you asked me about the companies. I came in later at Airbnb and Lyft, but I could talk about Etsy. We went into, and we were part of, I mean, Etsy hired a lot of people that were part of the community. I see a lot of like startups, especially, they're like, I raised a seed round pretty easily. I'm going to hire this incredible, like a lot of people want to hire me to build communities. And I'm like, I don't know anything about the education community. You should not be hiring me. Like, go find someone in the community you can hire to run the community who deeply understands the motivation and the community. So Etsy did that. They hired people from the community to build these programs. We were also incredibly cheap. And then we would go where the community lived already, which is pretty important. And a lot of us were already in these communities, but we also would go and provide value when we showed up. And a lot of that was in person. We went to pretty much every single craft show or art show that existed in North America.
Did you really?
Yes.
Wow.
A lot of long weekends.
Yeah, I bet. It's a good way to do it. It does make sense. There's also that like one-to-one stuff that people want to find a shortcut for, but I don't think there is one.
Yeah, yeah.
So we do use a lot of tools at MakerPad. Obviously, you've been into the no-code world as well. How has like new tools and like new places where communities hang out, how's kind of this shaping the landscape, and what do you think about new tools coming out which everyone kind of floods to?
Yeah, I guess I'm really excited because I think every community is unique in the feature sets that they need, and communities grow and need different ways to activate. And right, I think we're going from a place where it's like we have Facebook groups or we have a set of forums to a more well-rounded community programs because tools are getting easier to use and plug and play. And even having something like Zoom, even though I don't think it's the best tool for community events, but it actually is like so easy to use and we can bring people together, which 10 years ago wasn't the case. You'd have to buy some expensive, oh God, what were those other tools called for webinars? But yeah, there's a lot of tools that are not too expensive to test out. So I think that's pretty exciting. I do though still see people going to, I should build a Discord channel or I should build a Slack channel. And I just want to let people know there are other options available to you. It makes me sad when you think those are the only ways to build a community.
let's talk about like a few of them. Which are some that are interesting to you? Because we actually moved our community recently from that we used to live in Slack, and then we moved it over to Circle for a variety of reasons, including just the way that conversations can happen and replies can happen more like asynchronously, and messages don't get lost, etc. There's going to be lots of reasons. They've got a great team over there building some great feature sets, and they've kind of taken a lot of what was really good about old platforms, say like the old hardcore forums, and then combined it with some new good stuff, and they've come up with what we think is a great product. Like, how do you think about the current community tool set? And if you were to build a community today for name your interest, and you're actually going to start a new project, how do you kind of go about, and where would your community live?
Yeah, I really like Circle, actually. It's the one that I'm most excited about right now.
Good answer.
Yeah. So yes, good choice. I like Circle. I really like icebreaker.video for events.
Mm.
I don't know if you've used that, but I'll pair you up one-on-one. Well, you can have like a room like this and have some, programming, and then you can get paired up one-on-one with other attendees, and then it'll give you prompts that you'll go through, and then you'll get swapped and paired up with another attendee. And there's
Oh,
another
nice.
similar tool called Toasty.ai.
Okay.
It has a more structured sort of events platform, and then you can plug in different games, icebreakers like that. Toasty is pretty cool too.
Nice. I haven't heard of Toasty, but it looks cool.
Yeah, there's a new one starting called Mesh Communities. And they're really trying to be thoughtful about paid communities and maybe having like some sort of ad network in there. So they're really thinking on sustainability. So that's one to keep an eye on.
Do you think what's happened this year has accelerated the development of all these products and systems? And do you think it's a good thing, or they're gonna consolidate?
Well, yeah, I'm so interested to see how this goes. Oh, actually, I want to also call out ComSoar. So ComSoar is like they call themselves an
Yes.
operating system. So it's a way to really track where your community members are living and their engagement on multiple platforms. So ComSoar is another cool one. Excited for that. I mean, as a community builder, I've always had to hack together tools and dashboards. So I love seeing more of these operating system type of tools and formats rather than continually recreating Slack. I think instead, like,
Yeah.
help us understand healthy metrics for communities and how we are understanding them. Yeah, I'm waiting to see like how this goes. It could be the sort of like Shopify model where we have one like operating system that we're plugging in different ways to activate members,
Uh-huh. Yep.
or is it like who's creating the community SDK kit? I don't know. There's some things that I think we're waiting to happen here.
Interesting. And what do you think about having like communities in two places?
And well, I don't think one platform can meet the needs of a community right now. I haven't seen anything like that unless you're really like spending, $100,000 a year on some sort of custom build using, I don't know, Salesforce and Bevy and, these
Mm-hmm.
expensive platforms. So I think it's okay to span different platforms
Okay. Cool.
as long as it's
Straightforward
not,
answer. I like it.
as long as
Yeah,
it's
because
not
we
Facebook groups. Don't nobody start a Facebook group. Don't do it.
yeah, to be fair, I haven't been on Facebook in ages. I think I decided to like delete it from my phone, and I have not missed it at all. Tessa has a question. She says, any thoughts around starting out a community for a multi-sided marketplace? Would you bring all sides together for us to start, or focus on one side at a time?
I'd say one side at a time, because often they have different motivations, and often they want to talk about each other. So you might not get the most honest conversations happening if they're both there in the same space together. I can say at
Interesting.
Etsy, we focused on the seller, and what we were trying to do is give the seller the resources, the tools, the support that they needed to bring in and attract buyers. So before Etsy, photos that, unless it was a brand, everything looked like eBay photos, and we really had to instill in them how to take beautiful photographs. And that allowed them to show up better in Google search results and flood Pinterest. And when Instagram came up, have really powerful Instagram channels. So by investing in the seller side of the community, we actually did a favor for the other side of the marketplace. Oh, sorry, let me
Well,
find.
I've never actually thought about that side of community building with marketplaces. You almost kind of got two communities there by default. That yeah, you probably don't want them mixing for various reasons. It must be like tricky to manage as well. If anybody's asking, just wondering about the tools mentioned, what I'll do, I'll make sure these all get put into the circle thread, which is unique for this particular conversation. So all the resources will be there and can be sent out to you as well. So if you miss any, I know I've got some tabs open here with them also. You can visit them later. Don't worry, you'll have all of them. So Ed said, what's the website for Circle? Should be in the chat there. What do you think of building a community to support a brand or a product versus building a community as a standalone business, as an organization, for profit or non-profit? And what are the differences in approaches for each model?
Mm-hmm. I think if you're building for a brand or product, you have to be really focused and clear on what your goals are, what your mission is, what the value is you're bringing to the community. The nice thing about building a paid community or membership type of format is that you can be a little bit more open and bring people together and figure that out together. Where do we want to go together that we can't go alone? I think when you join a brand community, you kind of expect to have that leadership and guidance and resources, but together you can work with your community. If you're building like a sort of grassroots membership ground up, you can build that together.
Yep, got it. And are we going to see community bloat? Lots of communities are cropping up and in quick succession. Is there a tipping point on the horizon similar to subscribing to several email newsletters and becoming too overwhelming really quickly? Well, just to add my 2 cents onto the end of that, let's say like summary emails, everything that's happened in your community, or like Slack channels and notifications. How does this finish?
Right. Oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the theory right now, but there's like a limit to the number of connections a human can really hold and remember. So I think we're really pushing that limit these days, like how many connections we can possibly. Dunbar, thank you. I knew somebody would know this. Yeah, it's quite
Nice.
interesting. I went down the Dunbar rabbit hole too. There's some like new studies that have popped up saying this number is a little low, but yeah, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how we start to vie for community attention, which I think is quite dangerous. I actually am
You think it
starting to.
makes them more valuable or less valuable?
Oh, I do fear that we're gonna hit that point that I was talking about earlier, where people are gonna say we thought communities were valuable, but we realize they're not as valuable as we thought because there are way too many of them. Yeah, stretched way too thin and are too bloated. If we can get our act together and build valuable communities for people, this is my call to all of you, then we can prove that they are really valuable. And it's important to really think about human connection when we're building our brands and spaces, online spaces.
One of the things that I've talked about with various people before about like building audience first products and then building, obviously the community kind of naturally forms around products and brands, is that things like no code tools, they enable people to try ideas and try building stuff really easily, for one, quickly and cheaply. So you can kind of get to the stage where you can figure out with your little micro community shares the same interest, is there something here or not, rather than like investing all that time up front only for it to kind of be a non-starter, which is one of the things I think is awesome.
Yeah, I love that. I was just talking about this with someone. If you can really bring the community in and build together and have closed feedback loops, I mean, brands have paid me a lot of money to build feedback loops for them, only to not close them. So you can like build these powerful listening programs, but then never close that up, which is why when someone asked earlier, like, is it harder? It's actually easier because those loops are so tight and closed, and people feel really valued. If you're building something, I think we also forget, I talk to builders all day. I'm like, your community member has no idea what it looks like on the other side of tech to like build a company from scratch, to be in the startup environment. And that is so exciting for them. I love the build in public, movement that's going on right now. Really like tied to build, I think, because we can build so quickly. And you bring people in. I would say think about the programs you want to create, like create a little bit of structure around gathering feedback, building, and then closing that loop and going back to the community and saying, X number of you said this. I've done this trick where I will actually go back through hundreds of forum threads where people will ask for a feature, and as soon as we launch it, I'll go and plug in every single forum thread that was raised and say, hey, we heard you, even if it was like 3 days ago. Little hack to show people how you're listening. You can do that with customer tickets too.
Yeah, that's good. Sometimes we have like an unanswered question in Circle, which like I don't know the answer to. It could be like a tricky like no code question, and I'll just like either share the link if it's like an open question, or just post like a screenshot with the name removed on Twitter, and then like share it to the person, and we get some like good feedback and bring more people in. So sharing from your community externally onto open channels is quite a good way that we found to bring and engage people. We have 6 minutes left before we've just torn through an hour there. Let's spend a few minutes just talking about tactics. Let's assume I want you to play the role of yourself starting a brand new product. Let's say it's a product or a suite of products which is perfectly suited to forming a community around. Could you talk us through how you would step through that process in your head?
Yeah, I'm obsessed with sometimes I'll just, if I have a big question like this, I'll start with one of my mentors. His name's Charles Vogel. He wrote a book called The Art of Communities, and then him and another woman that I'm obsessed with, Carrie Melissa Jones, wrote a book about called Building Brand Communities. So if you want to go deep, check those two out. But he has 7 principles for community building, and my dream actually is to build technology like through some of these community foundational principles. Oh God, I could just talk for an hour on this question. Wait, but I'll get too lofty. You're trying to get me to give you features? What are you trying to get me to give you? Probably features, right?
Let's talk about tactics, tools, features. Yeah. We could carry this conversation on in like a circle thread after this and throughout the next however many weeks. There's just if people are gonna leave this conversation today with like some like bullet points of what they can do, or at least like figure out where they are and where they should go next.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I think is a big missed opportunity is stories. So communities, stories are like such an important element of community building. They help reinforce values. They'll talk about good behavior, and they'll help you understand deeper like who we are. You could talk about the elders in your community, as we call it in community terms. And we don't do enough to capture stories because we often can't really like just tie it to some kind of like business metric, but it is a way that we can bond with each other. So if I look at like Airbnb and an Airbnb user profile, and I think Airbnb is building community naturally and authentically, yet their website, I don't see community there anymore. And when I look at someone's profile, it's like a photo and some reviews, and the reviews might have stories, but how are we capturing, this is like a challenge that I'm thinking about, how are we capturing the stories of our community so that we can learn from each other and inspire each other and go a little bit deeper. I think we build technology always to think about what is the CTA, where are we trying to get someone to go? What do we want from them? I'm really interested in how we can like shift that a little bit and build technology so that we can understand each other a little bit more, and we can have conversations, and we can go deeper. We can like create our own rituals. We can create our own rewards and recognition systems. But often these things just don't ladder up to like the CTAs. So I don't know. It's not a hard and fast set of features, but I just think there's a real opportunity to play and explore and get creative with these challenges.
Yes, it definitely seems like it's more of a like long-term payoff building a community than kind of like a quick win as to like running an ad or like something which sits on like the marketing side, which is I think like you mentioned previously, I think it's important to actually see that as two completely separate channels. So the marketing team shouldn't live maybe within the community team and vice versa. We have a few more minutes. Let's just rip through some more questions. We have some more sitting in here from Ariane. Sometimes you start communities and it starts out great, but the engagement of its members slowly declines. How would you think about a situation like this? Do you have advice on what to do to reignite engagement?
My hack for this is actually try some different kind of programming. It's probably what I usually suggest is bring people together in person so that we can form bonds in a space like this and know actually, oh, now I really know Tom is interested in this topic. And when it comes to my mind a few days later, I'm going to go to the Slack channel and post that. So creating like engagement where we can actually deeply connect with each other. So we want to go back into these spaces because I bet you what's happening in your networks is that there's a lot of these light bonds being formed and we might not know how to behave, and we're probably just throwing articles around this topic at each other instead of like deeply understanding each other.
Gotcha. Yeah, I like that. Ed says, can we please post the authors and books if possible? Maybe we could post those in the community thread. We just post the link. If you've got any questions that we didn't get a chance to answer today, feel free to post them in the thread, and hopefully we can get a couple of those answered. Danielle, if you would be so kind at some point to check those, that'd be amazing. Couple more biggest community insights / lessons from Etsy and Lyft.
Mission, make sure you have a mission that you're inspiring people to rally around. I'm sure you're sick of hearing that from me. Let's see.
It's good.
I hope that one worked. Yeah. Okay. Biggest lessons. Man, I think what has worked for me, it's like the people I work with. This is like the internal community. I was talking earlier about hiring through a set of values. So the community you're building internally is as important as the community you're building externally. And if you get that right magical community sauce internally, it's so much easier to then, expand that out to your external community. So the people that you surround yourself with and how you value them and how clear you are on the work you're doing together. I think at Etsy, that was so strong. And at BarkBox, that was so strong. And on my teams at Airbnb and Lyft, that was so strong. So made the work much easier when we had support from each other and knew where we were going together.
Love it. I think that is a very good and fitting way to wrap up this session. Danielle, thanks very much for sharing all your expertise. I know I learned a load of things today, so that was great. Hopefully everybody did too. If there's something comes up that you didn't get a chance to answer, make sure you access Circle. Hopefully you've got like an email, you know how to jump on that thread and post any questions you have there. What else? The tools that were mentioned today. So Toasty, Mesh Community, Circle, Icebreaker, all those good stuff. We'll get them posted on the thread as well. So you will have those. Any questions as well available on email all the time. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the first session. And thanks for all the amazing questions. Thanks again to Danielle. And yeah, we have actually a live build session with Stacker coming up where we'll be building out an actual practical build of something that Danielle is working on also. So we'll share the details with that shortly, and it'll be in your program as well. So thank you, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the session again. Enjoy your day, morning, lunchtime, evening, wherever in the world you are, and we will see you on the next session. See you
Thank
later.
you.
Thanks, Danielle. Thanks, everybody. See you soon. Bye.